On this episode of Buff's Garage, we finally got paint on the Travelall, and it looks good.
Finally, it's dry. It's rough, very gritty. That was the worst primer ever, but it's dry. Well, I guess after 3 days of sitting, trying to get this place hot enough to dry this garbage primer, I think we're ready to start painting. But because it's got such a rough texture, and the primer didn't lay smoothly, we're gonna go ahead and have to sand this. And you're supposed to sand it anyway between the primer and paint layer. I got spoiled with the A-Team van using tractor paint, and only having a couple days to do it, I was able to slap that primer on, and because it was hot, it dried fast and I was able to lay the colors on. Still had issues, but at the end of the day, it turned out really great. I don't think painting bodies for me. I don't think this is something I would want to do more than a couple times. This one kind of burned me a little bit. But I can tell you this, you guys can do it at home. Just don't try to make it something that it's not. You could turbo can it with spray paint and it could still turn out good. But when you put effort into it and then it turns out less than you were hoping for, it's kind of disappointing. But I'm excited now that we can actually go ahead and block sand this. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to be smooth. I don't want any of this gritty stuff. Like, it's like a porcupine. I don't want any of that showing through. So we'll get all that smoothed down, rough it all up, and we're gonna put some paint on today.
Well, long gone are the days of waiting in line just to get the best deals on Black Friday. If you want one of the best deals on Black Friday, just sign up with my partner, DraftKings Sportsbook. With all the football madness that's happening, they have touchdowns on sale all week long. I've teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook. From Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday, you're going to want to go to the DraftKings app and check out all the deals and offers. You don't want to miss this. Check out the URL and head to the DraftKings app. Touchdowns are on sale at DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. I want to thank DraftKings for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to work. And don't forget, touchdowns are on sale.
Well, I gotta be honest, it's really hard to pick up the sander again after that nightmare from before, but everything I've read says you want to block sand this at around 400 grit, somewhere in that range, but I don't have 400 grit. I do have some 600 grit. I simply don't want to start out again at 220 or 80 and end up having to redo this again. So I figure 600 grit will get most of the little stalagmites, whichever ones come up from the bottom. Anyway, we need to get all those knocked down and get it not textured. I get it. Probably laid it on too thick. It didn't want to dry. This is what we end up with. So I guess we're going to sand it at 600. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to the store. That doesn't work because the power's not on. Oh, and it's mid-November. And it's so hot in here I had to take my hoodie off. Part of that's because I got the heat cranked up to make sure this thing dry. But also, we had a warm front come through. So that was nice. It immediately cooled back down. It's a little chilly and windy out today, but... Alright, let's try to sand. Now for clarification, normally you'd want to block sand that, and that is basically you could take a block of wood and wrap it in sandpaper and smooth it all out. Another option is they have air powered ones, so you can buy one of those and block sand this, and then you'd want to do a guide coat to see where your high and low spots are. We're not doing any of that. I'm in fact using the same sander I used for everything else with 600 grit, and we're gonna just knock stuff down. Hopefully don't burn through the primer. Just enough to make it smoothish, and then we're gonna paint it. So beyond the top layer, this stuff is still pretty gummy. And after 3 days, if it hasn't dried yet, what's that tell you? It tells you a lot of things. Number one, I don't know what I'm doing. Number two, probably laid it on too thick. Number three, this stuff is garbage. Would never buy it again. That is the anchor to all of the other things. Yes, I don't know what I'm doing. Yes, I probably painted it on too thick. Yes, it was probably too cold. But first and foremost, this was garbage. Could you have the same thing happen to really good stuff? Absolutely. But I can tell you, when I shot the Van Sickle, had none of these problems. It exceeded the expectations. So I will be using Van Sickle in the future if I ever paint anything again. Gummy, just gummy and gross. Okay, here's what we basically concluded. 600 grit probably isn't enough. You probably need at least 400, something like that. And the other thing is, some places it's smoothing out really, really nice. I'm really proud of it. But that's the places where the primer dried all the way through. So I'm able to just knock down the top and it comes out smooth, where gritty here, smooth back here. Other places, it immediately gums up, ruins my sandpaper, and rips it all the way down to the paint layer. So obviously it wasn't dry in those spots. And then there's a few spots where the primer didn't set, it didn't level very well. And so we're gonna have to fill a few of those little spots with some kind of spot putty, glazing putty, whatever you call it. Just the little pinholes and imperfections. We're not going for anything crazy, but a decent sized little pinhole you're going to see, and when you go to lay your paint down, it's going to create like a little bullet hole or divot. You're going to see it when the paint lays down. So if we can smooth that out, it'll at least give our paint a little better chance of laying flat, especially in these weird curves and stuff. So what all that means, oh, and I burned through in a few places already. So what that means is we're going to need a little bit more primer. Not going to use this stuff again. I'm going to just go to the Tractor Supply and get some Van Sickle primer. Just spray can it because we just need to hit a few spots. Nothing, we're not going to redo the whole thing. But maybe we should. Maybe we should do a video where we use Van Sickle spray instead of with a gun. We use the regular cans. Spray paint. I think that would be cool. Anyway. So I got to run to town. That is an hour there and back. So enjoy a few moments of silence for me while I have to drive to town. And I'll see you when I get back and we will finish sanding this because I want to put paint on it today. It's warm enough in the shop, we need to get it done. All right, be right back. Well, I made it back from the store. Hopefully you missed me. But I grabbed some extra primer. I went ahead and grabbed some gloss white paint because the cheap paint I got on sale, it worries me now. Two reasons. Number one, it's the same brand, that Magic with a J brand that the primer was. And number two, it's on sale for a reason. So I may just hold it back and use it for another project. And I grabbed some Van Sickle gloss white tractor paint in the spray can. And it's just gonna have to be good enough. I haven't 100% committed to not using the other stuff, but I got backup. It's an hour there and back, so I got backup. All right, so we need to keep sanding, touch up the primer spots that have burned through or gummed up, and get this thing painted. So I've sanded down a lot of this and it has smoothed out pretty well. It's not great, but it has really improved. There's a spot right there. It has improved at least. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start taping off where I'm gonna put the white. And I'm just gonna start working on that because I gotta get some paint on this thing. Weather is turning and I wanna go out and enjoy this thing before the weather gets too cold. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape it off, get it ready for the white, and then we'll start painting white. Well, I've had enough taping it off, so I say let's just throw some white on it. And if I don't like it, we can always go back to the tractor paint white. Well, the other tractor paint white. So I just say let's go for it. Now it says you want to mist on a coat, which I got a little too heavy in the corner. That's just the way I do it, unfortunately. So we're gonna mist this on. We'll let this one dry, or get tacky at least, and then we'll mist on a second coat. And then we'll come back and try to do an even glossier coat. This is at least as good a quality as what was on there. And even though it did rust through, think about it, that's like 20, 30 years that it's been on there. Getting thick enough, I need my mask on.
It's not great, but it's white. But I don't have enough white to do the side, so I'm going to have to go back to town again. So I think what I'll do is I'll let that set up, start prepping the rest of the body. We'll put the color on, then we'll come back, mask this off, and we'll go ahead and do the white. It's going to happen. Well, I've given the roof some time to dry. I'm finding it turned out pretty good, but not great. But that's kind of expected on this level of paint job. I mean, I skipped going with the siphon gun and went with spray paint on the roof, and at this point, it is what it is. It's not horrible, but it's not great. So I ran into town, the old Tractor Supply, and picked up a full gallon of gloss white. That's way beyond what we planned on doing, but the idea is I've got plenty left over for another project. The other thing it's going to do, it's going to give me the ability to put a little extra hardener in it, maybe get it to dry a little quicker, because it's cold outside. And I've got the wood stove cranked up, but it is not warm in here. I figured being able to manipulate the paint a little bit and get it to dry a little faster, whether it lasts longer or not, I don't know, but hopefully it dries faster. We're going to put this in the gun this morning. I'm going to double check the body and see if there's any more places I need to knock down with the sandpaper. Otherwise, we're just going to shoot it with the white in the stripe area along the sides. And then we've got to paint the brown because I've got to leave town. And I wanted to have this thing ready for a camping trip. But at this point, I just need to get it done before I leave town. So let's get the white on there and then go after the brown and see what happens. Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised about anything at this point. I went ahead and sanded down the part where we're putting the white stripe. And what can I say other than it in fact was still not dry 5 days later. The top layer's dry, but the underneath isn't. And that's just not good. That just shows what garbage this stuff was right out of the can. So I can blame myself on a few things. I might not have mixed the ratios correctly. I may not have sprayed it correctly. I may have laid it on too thick. It may have been too cold. There's so many things I could have done. But at the end of the day, even garbage should have dried by now. And it didn't. So here we are. We're shooting white paint. It's just this, it is what it is. Waiting on the air to build up here. Hopefully this is better than the spray paint. Although I'm sure it'll get everywhere. It'll be fine. Set up. We'll let that kind of set up, flash, whatever you call it. Get it tacky. And then we're going to come back and hit it with some wet coat. With the roof instead of spray cans. So much faster, much better finish. That's the way to go. Oh man, look at those runs. Those are special. There's more. Apparently went a little too heavy.
here, all through here, all through here.
Time to start mixing up the brown. It's like a metallic, burnished gold, brown, either way metallic, so it should be very pretty.
On this episode of Buff's Garage, I finally get the primer to dry enough that I can do some block sanding, and then we start the two-tone paint job. As you can see, we've got this metallic brown on the top with white on the top and the sides. I do it all in the garage for the first time shooting metallic. No idea what I'm doing other than the A-Team van as reference. I think it turned out pretty good. Got those beautiful mask creases on my face. That's all right. So all in all, I don't think this thing turned out too bad. Obviously, I need to touch up the white. That I overshot, because I couldn't wait on it to dry to tape it off. So I figured it'd be easier to shoot all this brown, get it done, and then tape it off and reshoot some of the white. I also noticed some of the places that I had to go back and resand. It was basically turning gummy, and that was before I shot it brown. This was just the primer. That's 5 days of drying, and it was still a little gummy at the very base of it. So either I laid it on way too thick, or this was just the worst primer ever. But what I'll say is the brown metallic, I think, is really pretty. But I learned a few things. Don't lay metallic on too thick, because if it starts to run, you're going to see it. Metallic does not hide the runs very well. And what I mean by that is you'll have a beautiful pattern of glitter just moving along, and all of a sudden, zoop, and there's your run. You know what though? From a distance, this thing looks pretty good. It's going to have a decent shine to it. I can actually cut and polish this to a point. Once I come back and tape it off and finish the white,
and put the trim on it, it's going to be beautiful. But I got to be real with you guys. I've simply run out of time. It is Thanksgiving week, Black Friday, all those things are happening. I've got to go out of town, and for that means this thing's going to have plenty of time to dry, so then I can come back and touch up the white, put the trim on it, and I will show you all of that in another episode. Not a continuation of this one. This is done. As far as this series is, this is done. So let's go over what we learned. First and foremost, the easiest way to shoot paint, spray paint. But it gets everywhere, it takes a while, and if you don't know what you're doing, which I don't, it takes a little bit to master. You may end up with a lot of overspray. You definitely have a lot of little white speckles all over your stuff. If you're trying to shoot without masking too much, you're definitely going to still end up with white speckles everywhere. At least in this case with the white paint. But it works very well. But I can tell you shooting it with a gun was better, faster, it coated thicker, and I think it's going to dry really nice. I may end up having, once this brown dries, coming back, taping off and reshooting it with the gun. Shoot it white with the spray gun. I think it'll look so much better. But I just was in a hurry and didn't want to deal with the spray paint. The other thing I learned is automotive paint shoots really good. This is a single stage versus base coat clear coat. Base coat clear coat would have probably made this paint a lot nicer, and I would have been able to really smooth it out in the final. But instead I added a little bit of hardener, and hopefully that gets this paint set up even though it's not super warm in here. Reducer, very important for shooting through the gun. I noticed that this single stage didn't really need much reducer. It was thin enough as it was, but the tractor paint does need it. So I mixed the tractor paint on the cup, which it's hard to see now, but an 8-to-1-to-1. So I did 8 parts tractor paint to 1 part hardener. That'll give it a little bit more gloss, and of course it'll make the paint harder. And then 1 part reducer, and that seemed to shoot really good through the gun. In fact, a little bit too thin in places, and I got some runs that I'm going to have to correct later. But we're coming back to fix all the white after this holiday weekend. So there it is, guys. She is a beautiful, beautiful brown metallic 2-tone white. I just think it's gorgeous. There's a lot of problems with the paint. There's a lot of problems with the primer. There's a lot of problems that we could just sit and deal with until the end of times. Literally, so much we could be doing. But this truck just needed to be shiny. This truck just needed to not have holes in the roof. This truck just needed to get back out there and enjoy life. We can always sand it down and paint it again later. Maybe we will have learned something by then on how to do this properly, and it'll come out even better. But it's just an old truck. And being that it's just an old truck, we just didn't need to spend that much time and effort on it. I spent way too much time and effort on it, and that's shown all throughout this series, which I will get all summed up into one video later so that you guys can just watch the whole thing through. I think it turned out really well. I hope you guys like it. I'm gonna put together the new t-shirt design, and it will be in the store for pre-order. If you guys want a Travelall shirt, please pre-order it. That lets me know how many of what sizes I need to get ordered. We'll get them here and shipped out just as soon as possible. This won't take months and months. This will take weeks, but you guys get your orders in, I'll get them made. I think it turned out good, guys. I hope you like it. I hope you come back next week and see the new stuff we got to work on, and we got a collaboration coming up very soon from somebody you know well and somebody I enjoy working with. So stay tuned for all that. Thanks for watching Buff's Garage. Make sure to hit like and subscribe below. That helps the algorithm. Put a comment down below. Tell me how horrible this paint is, or if you like it. Either way. And don't forget to hit up the merch at buffsgarage.com. And thanks again. See you next week.